Hi everyone, thanks for watching. My name is Brielle Johnson. I am an alumni of the Psi chapter of Tau Beta Sigma at the University of Arkansas. For those who don't know anything about my background, I am a psychology graduate. I graduated with my psychology degree from Arkansas in 2016. And what I'm here to talk to you guys about today specifically is interviewing. Since graduating, I worked as a technical recruiter at a couple different companies, and now I actually work full-time as a corporate recruiter, specifically working for campus hires. So I go to college campuses and recruit campus hires for my company. So what all of that means in relation to y'all today and kind of what is relevant to this video today. I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, as probably over 1,000 people in my over 2 years of experience working as a recruiter. So what I really wanted to do today is really bring some of that knowledge of being on the other side to y'all, so that way you actually are equipped and feel better prepared going into interviews. So that is what today's video is about. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, today we're going to go over what happens once you actually land the interview. So you land the interview, now what? So I'm going to take you through a couple of really important stages today. The first and the one that I'm going to talk the most about is going to be interview prep. I cannot express how important interview prep is and how few people out there actually do it. The second, I am going to talk with you briefly about some interview tips and tricks that I've seen from my time, some things to prepare for once you're actually in the interview and things to actually do. And then your final talking point today, if you will, is going to be what to do after the interview. So today we are going to start off by interview prep. So like I mentioned, this is the most important step. The very first thing that you need to do once you actually land the interview and you've called your mom, you've called your best friend, you're super excited, is start doing research. So I like to think of interview prep as like homework or studying for a test, right? The interview is the test. You are going to, yeah, sure, you can, do okay on the test maybe if you have some prior knowledge, some prior experience. But if you really want to nail this particular interview with this particular company, you gotta do your homework, right? You have to know the company, you have to know your resume, and you have to be able to bring it to this interview. So the first thing to look up is going to be the company. So everyone has a reason that they apply to different companies. So what is yours? Why did you apply to this particular company in the first place? If you were just throwing your resume out there and they were the first company to get back to you, that's fine. That is absolutely okay. Don't tell your recruiter that. You can tell your friends and family, but what you need to do at that time is actually go and come up with a why. Why do you want to work for this company? Why did you apply to this particular company? So another thing that you would think is very simple, but people just don't end up doing in interviews, is know what the company actually does. So I would advise, and you can see this at the bottom as well, do your research on LinkedIn, specifically look at their website. You will be able to see and tell a lot about a company from their website because that's how they present themselves to the world, right? So make sure to look up their website if you do nothing else. So look up the company. What do they do, right? Because you're not going to be able to get very far in an interview if you don't actually know what the company does. And this all relates to the actual interview, and I'll talk about that later. So once you've actually researched the company and you've figured out why you applied to this company, what can you actually bring that fits in with this company's work and ideals, right? What is it? Some specific skill set, something you learned in your degree? Is it the right kind of company culture? What is that? So those are very important having to do with the company. So the next one is more important even than the company. What is the position you've applied for? I know a lot of you guys have probably thrown your resumes into the black hole of, applying for jobs, just throwing your resume everywhere online. Make sure at this step to print out your job description. Print out the job description for the position that you are interviewing for and you'd applied for. This is going to set you up for success later, and this is going to set you up for success in your interview prep. So very similar to why you applied for the company. So why did you apply to this specific job? Was there something in the qualifications that you were like, yes, that is me, that is what I want to do, that is my background? And then going even further into that, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty, what qualifications are listed that you have? Now, I do want to caveat here about qualifications. So qualifications, from a recruiter point of view, from my experience, and from other professionals' experiences in the field, qualifications are a nice little laundry list that hiring managers come up of the skills that they would love to have. If they came up with the perfect candidate, right, that is what it would be. There are very few times that I've ever hired someone who met every single qualifications. So look up the qualifications on that job description and see what you have in relation to it. There's a reason you got an interview. So look at the qualifications, match them to your own, and be able to speak to those specific qualifications. Now, this is probably the most important part of your interview prep. I cannot stress this enough. Write down questions for the interviewers. Prepare. If you don't do the other two steps, at minimum, do this step and bring these with you to the interview. This is going to set you up for success, and this is what is going to show the hiring manager, whoever you're interviewing with, that you are prepared, that you weren't just walking off the street, come into the interview, you're not just interviewing with 50 other million, jobs. This is a very, very important step. So what I like to tell my candidates and what I look for whenever I'm interviewing people is the most important things for you in a job. So these are going to be whether it's salary, location, what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, career growth. What does that look like for you? That is something that you need to be prepared to answer in an interview, and something that you need to actually prepare yourself. What are those things? Have you ever thought about that before? Because that is going to kind of set you up for the rest of the interview. So the rest of the questions on here, and I do have resources that I'll provide as well in addition to this video, but just for time's sake, I'm not going to go through all of them specifically. But I know that probably the biggest thing that I look for whenever I interview people is, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? Because that is going to carry through your entire conversation. Yeah, sure, strengths and weaknesses, qualifications, are going to be very important. And obviously, there's a reason that they pulled your resume. But for the most part, your passion is going to show how you're going to be a great worker. You're going to be a good employee. You're going to succeed at your job. That is where the key is, I think, in all interviews. And that's something that I didn't realize until I was on the other side of it. So that is probably the biggest question that I ask people. Strengths and weaknesses, yeah, they're important. Just know them, be able to put a positive spin on your weaknesses. You've heard it a million times, so, but definitely still important. I felt like I needed to include it on here. And qualifications as well. Like I said earlier, when you're looking at that job description, make sure you know what qualifications you actually bring to match that job description. Now, kind of tying in with the first question, I like to ask my candidates open-ended questions, because the open-ended questions will tell you so much about a person. Like I said, it always goes back to passion with me. And yes, qualifications are important, but how you talk in those open-ended questions, you can tell if someone's passionate about what they do. So be prepared to answer open-ended questions, and be able to always tie the open-ended questions back to the job description, back to your qualifications. And I put salary expectations on there. Typically, you're only going to be asked that question with a recruiter or an HR professional in your first interview, but that's just something to kind of prepare for. So actual questions to prepare. I've included a worksheet on this of examples of questions that I feel like are really important, but these are probably my favorite 5. I will put these at the top so that way you guys can kind of see, but these questions are, for me, what I look for and what I really like, and some good questions that I've gotten from people in the past that makes me feel like the person is actually engaged and actually trying to get this job. So you can do some extra credit preparation. Like I said, interview preparation is going to be the biggest thing you do. I know that was a lot of preparation. So if you really do want to go above and beyond, which some people are those kinds of people, some people aren't. Some of those other steps are going to be just enough for you. If you feel like you are one of those people who just wants to prepare, these are a couple of things that you can do. So you can look up other people who have the position that you're applying for or similar positions that you're applying for on LinkedIn. Guys, don't be scared that they can see your profile. It's not that big of a deal. It's LinkedIn. People look at your profile all day, every day. So it's really not that big of a deal. Don't feel anxious about it. Coming from a recruiter who has used LinkedIn a lot, I don't really ever look at that. And then also another really good tip I would say is going to be check Glassdoor to see if there are any previous interviews that you can read about. A lot of, I say take what's on Glassdoor with a grain of salt. I am not the biggest fan personally of Glassdoor, but it does have some useful tools on it, and the interview is one of them. So definitely check Glassdoor. I think it would be fruitful, especially if it's like a college position or an entry-level position where they're hiring in bulk. There's probably going to be some questions on there so you can get an idea of how your interview is going to be. So now we talk about the interview. So this is what to bring and how to actually go about your interview. So what to bring. Make sure to bring your resume. I cannot stress this enough. I know it's something that is very simple, but I cannot tell you how many times people just have not got their resumes before. I might suggest bringing a resume in like a black portfolio. If you don't have a portfolio, they can get a little pricey. Depending on your budget, you can also get a black folder or just a folder in general. That is okay as well. But I would bring your resume, and the reason that portfolios are so great is because most of the time a lot of them have notes in them, notepads, so you can actually take your own notes. Bring the job description. So just like I said earlier, if it's really, really helpful to have that job description because then you can actually reference it in your interview. You can highlight things. If you're a highlighter, you can underline things that are important or that you feel like are important or the qualifications you have. I would definitely bring that. And then finally, if you don't, bring anything else, make sure you bring your list of questions. You'd be surprised at how many people forget your questions in the middle of the interview just because you're overwhelmed with information. So bring a list of questions, even if you write it down, if you print it out before, bring a list of questions because I guarantee you, you are going to forget something in your interview. How to act in an interview. Make sure you're on time. I cannot tell you how many times that I have seen people get late and get passed over for a job because they were late. They might have been a great candidate. They might have been, kind of in competition with another person, but the other person got it because they were on time and this individual was not. Look the part. Make sure you dress professionally. I always recommend overdressing rather than underdressing. This is something that I never really got until I kind of got on the other side of it and I understood why it was so important. So a lot of times, especially when you're interviewing with recruiters, recruiters can seem very friendly and, kind of like your best friend. Yes, we are. But also at the same time, we are professionals. We are trying to see if you're going to be a good fit for our company. If you're talking negatively about a class a classmate on a group project, or if you're saying that you had a bad professor, or, you know, if you were in a previous job and you were, you know, it was just not a good experience, make sure to make a positive spin on things and say, you know, it wasn't the best experience, but I was grateful to go through it because I learned so much and blah, 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 that kind of thing. I have heard people trash their previous employers, their previous classmates, and known that they would do the exact same thing at my company and they would not be passed through because of that. Be professional. Like I said, recruiters, sometimes hiring managers, you know, they're going to seem like your best friends, but I cannot stress this enough. When you're in an interview from the other side, we know that your interview is the best that you are going to act, even as an employee, because you don't have the job yet. You don't have the guarantee. So if you are not acting professional in your interview, how are you going to act once you're an actual employee? Make sure that you are professional. I put this in here because it's a personal pet peeve of mine. Don't ask about the salary unless it's brought up first. Don't ask about the salary unless it's brought up first. That's all I'll say about it. And this is something that I like to tell people because I think that a lot of times people who go for interviews forget this. Even though you are there for an interview and you are interviewing for the job, you are also interviewing the company. You are interviewing the company to make sure that they're a good fit. As a corporate recruiter, I have to kind of sell my company. It's kind of seen as selling my company to the candidate once the actual interview is over. When I tell them about my company culture and all of this stuff, I mean, I have to make sure that the other person actually wants to be at this company. So on the flip side of that, what that means for y'all is make sure you know what the expectations are going to be, that if you were to get a call an hour later, that you would be, you know, sure, some people need time to process or whatever, but you would feel confident or almost 100% confident either saying yes or no to a position. You are interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. And then finally, make sure that your last question is about next steps. And I'll talk about why this is so important here in just a second. So after the interview is over, you've sweated through it all, you've drank a gallon of water, you called your best friend or your mom or your dad, you know, to tell them how it went. So what do you do after? So the reason I said to make sure that your last question was about last steps is so you can get a timeline. So you can set up your own expectations of when am I actually going to hear back about this position. I can't tell you how many times that I have, you know, when I was on the other side of it, when I was interviewing for jobs, I did not do that. And I was so anxious until I heard back. And, you know, it could be days or weeks. Some companies take a little bit longer to get back to you. And that time is nerve-wracking. So make sure that you get in a timeline so that way you can actually know and set feasible expectations for yourself of when you're going to hear back. So after the interview, I always suggest sending an email to your recruiter or your interviewer expressing your gratitude. If you didn't get the interviewer's business card for some reason, or some companies don't allow you to get you know, the contact information of your interviewer, you know, you can send it to whoever your point of contact was and just say, hey, can you send this to my interviewer? I do that for people all the time. It's not a big deal. But I always say, you know, express your gratitude to the employer, to the interviewer, to whoever it is, because sometimes if they're on the fence about you, that can push you forward. I've seen it happen before. And finally, if they have not gotten back to you within their timeline that they told you, which is why asking them about what their timeline is so important, shoot them an email. Shoot your point of contact an email. Say, hey, I know you guys said you'd have a decision within a week. Do you have any more information for me? Is there anything else you need from me? You know, any additional steps? You know, and you kind of go from there. And as a caveat to the middle talking point as the email, I'll go ahead and attach as a point of resource for y'all. I'll give you guys an example email of something that I personally use as well. So that's really all I had for you guys. So I really appreciate your time today. I know this was a little bit of a long video, so please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, follow-ups after this. It was kind of a brief overview of the interview process just for the sake of time. I don't want you guys sitting here for hours and hours, because trust me, I can talk for hours and hours if I really needed to. So you can email my personal email. It's listed down here. I'm happy to, answer any questions you may have, give you any additional resources I may have. So yeah, that's really all I had for you guys. So I hope you have a great rest of your day, your evening, whenever you're watching this, and I will talk to you soon.